suffered from continually broken hearts. It helped to talk about it, and if that were all I had taken from Harold, it would have been enough. But because of our proximity, I was made privy to the discoveries of Harold Schernoff. I was, for instance, present when Harold personally discovered a new use for electricity. Electricity had of course been around for a long time before Harold discovered it. Franklin did the kite, and Edison the bulb, and countless others added their inventions and improvements to bring it up to its present state as a functioning technology. But Harold found an even newer use for it one afternoon in Mrs. Johnson's science class. Actually, had I been thinking, I could have seen it coming. The day before, we had learned about electrons and how they traveled through wires. On the way home, we had stopped outside the school in some bushes as I avoided Dick Chimmer, who had said something about tying me in a square knot. Harold had said, "They're alive." "Who?" I asked. "Oh, you mean Chimmer? I'm not sure he's human, but I know he's alive."
"No, electrons. They're alive. They're in everything, in all the atoms that make us up, so they must be alive."
I tried to get a mental picture, but nothing came. Just a diagram that Mrs. Johnson had put on the board with little spheres orbiting in circles.
"I mean, think of it," he said, pushing his glasses back up his long nose. "If we're alive, then they're alive in us, whirling and spinning. We have the power of the atom in us, the power of the electron."
All right. So we have electrons in us and they're alive. So what?
Right inside us, all that power, if we just had a way to harness it.
Harness it?
Don't you see? Mrs. Johnson said atoms and electrons are the power of the sun. If we could tap into it. Think of it.
And I tried, but I was too limited. When Chimmer was gone and we were walking home, I might as well have been alone. He was already working on a way to do it, making calculations and formulas in his head. It happened the next day in Mrs. Johnson's class. Harold had acted strange walking to school, not talking much. Usually he was animated, talking with a lowered voice. You half expected him to start smoking a pipe and pointing when he wished to illustrate something important. "It would be physically impossible for Chimmer to break you exactly in half with his bare hands. The tensile strength of the center of the human body is far too strong to allow it. Though the attempt would probably be painful." Jim had been the usual disaster. Wankel, the gym teacher, football coach, Nazi beast, as Harold called him, made me try to climb the rope, which I couldn't. I hung in the middle like a sick bat while Wankel made Harold run laps, which he couldn't, until his sinuses blew and his nose ran down onto his t-shirt. After gym, we went to Mrs. Johnson's class, and had I been prepared, I could have watched more closely. But I know what time it happened. 2:23, because the clock stopped. At that instant, Mrs. Johnson turned her back to the room to write something on the board, and there was an enormous, cracking, buzzing sound. The whole room flashed in a white light, like 100 flashbulbs going off, and the pungent smells of ozone and burned flesh and hair filled the room. I turned and saw Harold sitting straight up, his glasses fogged so you could barely see his eyes opened wide, every hair on his head standing straight out and his mouth in a frozen smile that went from ear to ear. The entire left side of his head was covered in some dark blue fluid.
"Harold," I whispered, "are you all right?"
There was no answer. Later I was to find out what he had done. That he had calculated that a dead short would provide almost infinite power to his personal electrons. He'd taken the metal cartridge of a ballpoint pen and a large paper clip he'd swiped from Mrs. Johnson's